Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on this video. I know a lot of you use it to help you fall asleep. So before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're from and what time you're watching this. Alright, lights off, eyes closed, and let your imagination follow along with the story. In 2003, I was a 15-year-old kid living in a small city where everybody seemed to know everybody. I was shy, always had been, and the internet was my escape, a place to connect without the awkwardness of face-to-face. Back then, ICQ was still a big deal among teens in my area. I'd stay up late, adding new people and chatting away. I'd search by city, find kids from school, and strike up conversations. That's how I met her. Her name was Sarah. We started chatting, just innocent stuff at first, the usual, "Hey, what's up?" kind of thing. Sarah said she was 17, short brown hair, nerdy vibe. We clicked right away. We liked the same music, the same dumb TV shows, and I found myself opening up to her in a way I rarely did. It was weird, though. I went to a small Christian school, and I'd never seen her around. When I asked, she said she went to a different school across town. Made sense, I guess. We kept talking, and after a while, I gave her my phone number. We chat on the phone for hours, and it felt easy, natural. Then one day, she asked, "Want to hang out sometime?" Without thinking twice, we made plans for me to come over to her place to watch movies. The day came, and I made my way across town to the address she gave me. It was a small apartment building, nothing fancy. I remember thinking it seemed odd for her and her family to live in such a tight space, but I brushed it off. I climbed the stairs, knocked, and the door swung open. A woman stood there, late 20s, maybe early 30s. My stomach dropped. This was Sarah, but she looked nothing like the 17-year-old she described. Her hair wasn't short or brown, and she sure as hell wasn't a teenager. I was instantly creeped out, but followed her inside anyway, into a cramped one-bedroom apartment. Like an idiot, I asked, "So are your parents home?" She laughed. "No, it's just me here." I sat awkwardly on the couch, my brain screaming to get out. She looked at me from across the room and asked, "Do you drink?" I tried to play it cool. "Water." I joked. We both laughed, but it was forced, tense. She poured me a glass of wine. Wine. I didn't touch it. She popped in a bootleg copy of Finding Nemo and sat way too close. "My brother got this for me while it was still in theaters," she said. "He's like a hacker or something." I was barely listening. She was practically on top of me, and I was so uncomfortable, I slid off the couch and sat on the floor, my back against it. Then she straddled me from behind. "You look so tense," she said, rubbing my shoulders. "I'm really good at this. I can make you feel so good." I leaned forward, trying to get away. "Thanks, but you don't need to do that. Seriously, I'm fine." I mumbled something about needing to go. She pointed to her bedroom. "You can stay the night." I've never had a guy stay in my bed. She kept pushing, saying how she hadn't had sex in so long and just wanted to meet a nice guy like me. Her hands were on my arms, my face, and I was freaking out. I was still a virgin, but no way was this woman changing that. I talked my way out, made some excuse, and bolted. The next few days, she blew up my ICQ with messages. How she missed me, how she was sorry. I ignored them, but eventually I caved and responded. I asked why she lied, what her deal was. She said she had a hard time making friends and didn't like people her own age. I felt bad, like maybe she was just lonely, so I forgave her. We agreed to meet up again, just to talk in person. So there I was, at her apartment for the last time. I rode my bike over, and when I got inside, it wasn't just her. Her parents were there. They introduced themselves, all smiles, and then her dad said, "Finally, we get to meet Sarah's boyfriend." Her mom chimed in. "She's always going on about how great you are." My head was spinning. "Boyfriend?" Sarah grabbed my hand, laced our fingers together, and looked so damn happy. Her parents said they were just stopping by to pick something up and were about to leave. This was my chance. I grabbed the box her mom was reaching for and said, "I'll take that down for you." Her mom smiled. "You're a keeper." I helped them load the box into their SUV, hopped on my bike, and said, "I was just swinging by to say hi. I should probably get home." Sarah wrapped her arms around me and kissed my cheek. I rode off, confused as hell, and swore I'd never talk to her again. She sent a few more messages, left voicemails on a landline, but I never responded. I don't know what happened to her, and I'm not sure I want to. I still wonder why her parents didn't question my age, or if they were just okay with it. It's been years, and it still messes with my head. This happened when I was in 11th grade. I'm a girl, and I've always been a bit of a people pleaser. I hate calling people out, rejecting anyone outright, or making someone feel weird. I'm pretty open-minded too, and tend to just go with the flow. School started in early September, and in my marine biology class, I noticed this guy kept staring at me. I caught him from the corner of my eye, just watching. I gave him a quick half smile to acknowledge him and went back to my assignment. I didn't think much of it at the time. For a couple of weeks, he kept staring, but I brushed it off. He was tall, super skinny, with brown hair and eyes so dark they almost looked black. His face was plain, unremarkable, except for those intense eyes. One day, he finally spoke. "Hi," he said. I said hello back. He told me his name, Alex, and I told him mine. "I already know your name," he said, his voice flat, no expression on his face. It wasn't a huge deal. I have big handwriting, and he could have easily seen me write my name on my papers since he was always staring. Still, it felt a little off. I just laughed lightly, he said, "Okay," and started packing my bag as the bell was about to ring. I didn't have a big friend group. My few friends and I always sat at the same lunch table, usually reading quietly while we ate. I rarely looked around the cafeteria, too absorbed in my book. But one day, my friend finished her novel, so I put my book away and we started talking. That's when I noticed Alex staring at us from the courtyard tables outside. He didn't look away when I caught him. Didn't seem embarrassed at all. I pointed him out to my friend and told her about our class. She thought it was super creepy, but I shrugged it off. "He's probably just socially awkward," I said. "Harmless." The next day, I got to marine biology a bit early. It was just me, Alex, and one other girl in the classroom for about 10 minutes. I gave him my usual half smile, then pulled out my book to read. He was sitting there, hands folded over his mouth, staring at me again. With so few people around, it felt more awkward than usual. I glanced at him and raised my eyebrows like, "What's up?" He looked me up and down, slowly, deliberately. I asked, "You okay?" He said, "Yeah, just thinking inside my head." Okay, weird, but whatever, I thought. The next day at lunch, I found a piece of paper on our usual table with my name on it. Not just my first name, but my first and middle name. I opened it and my stomach churned. It read something like, "I wonder what your ass would look like with a thick PVC pipe shoved up it." What the hell? I looked around, but Alex wasn't there. I knew it was him, though. I was freaked out but too embarrassed to show the note to anyone, so I threw it away. I was dreading class later that day, but when I got there, Alex wasn't in his seat. I felt a wave of relief. After school, I headed to the bus area like always. That's when I saw him, Alex, leaning against a pillar, his backpack slung over one shoulder. My blood ran cold when I noticed a PVC pipe sticking out his bag, poking through the unzipped top. I tried not to react, even though my heart was pounding. I'm pretty sure he saw me read the note, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of a response. I just got on my bus and went home. The next morning, I made an appointment with a counselor and asked to switch classes. She was hesitant since we were already a month and a half into the school year, but I think my good grades and clean record helped. She got it done. For the rest of the year, I avoided Alex like the plague. He still stared at me during lunch, And once, I caught him taking photos of me at the bus area without my permission, which was against school rules. I started carrying pepper spray for when I got off at my bus stop, just in case. When 12th grade started, Alex was gone. He wasn't at our school anymore. I have no idea what happened to him, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to know. The whole thing left me shaken, and I still get chills thinking about that note and the pipe in his bag. About 4 years ago, I lived in a college town while my husband was attending the university. We had 2 little girls, a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and we loved the city. It was incredibly family-friendly, with tons of great spots to take the kids. One of our favorite places was the public library. The children's section was tucked away from the rest of the building, so the kids could run around and play without bothering anyone. It had toys, puppet shows, a huge train set, and an amazing princess castle. My girls adored it, so we went there at least twice a week. One morning star, I packed up the kids and headed to the library. My 2-year-old was happily playing with the castle, her absolute favorite, while I held my 6-month-old a few feet away. A woman approached me, gushing about how adorable my baby was. I was used to this. My youngest was a gorgeous baby with big brown eyes, dark ringlets, and the chubbiest cheeks you've ever seen. People often stopped to coo at her, but this woman was different. Something about her set off my mom instincts. My stomach twisted, and I was instantly on edge. She stood way too close, crowded my space, and was far too touchy with my daughter, pinching her cheeks, rubbing her head, grabbing her tiny hands, even kissing them. She kept inching closer, saying this frantic, sing-song voice, "Oh, I just love babies. She's so pretty, I just love her." I tried to put some distance between us, stepping back, but she kept closing the gap. Then she asked to hold her. I shut that down fast, making excuses. "She's pretty tired. We need to go soon. She's really attached to me. She'll just cry." Looking back, I wish I just told her back off, but I was nervous and unsure of her intentions, so I fell back on politeness. After a moment, my baby dropped her pacifier on the floor. The woman swooped down to grab it, but instead of handing it to me, she put it in her own mouth, like she was cleaning it, then tried to pop it back into my daughter's mouth. I snatched it away and said we had to go. She pushed again. "Oh, please, let me hold the baby before you go." I told her no, firmly, and started calling for my older daughter so we could leave. Then it escalated. "Oh, I just love babies. I just can't help it," she said, and before I could react, she grabbed my daughter right out of my arms. She started inching away, holding my baby. I was terrified and furious. "Give me back my child." I snapped, lunging for her. I yanked my daughter back and had to practically shove the woman away because she kept scooting closer. I grabbed my 2-year-old and bolted out of the building, desperate to get away. As I reached my car, I realized a woman had followed us into the parking lot. She was still rambling. "Oh, you have 2 beautiful babies." I felt sick. While I was buckling my baby into her car seat, my 2-year-old would be standing right there, vulnerable, and this woman was creeping closer every second. I was shaking, on the verge of tears, but my adrenaline kicked in. I was certain she was going to try to grab one of my kids. Somehow, I managed to pick up both girls and buckle them into the car without letting go of either one. As I pulled away, I watched her in the rearview mirror. She just stood there in the parking lot, staring at my car until we were out of sight. I didn't go back to that library for a long time after that. The whole thing left me rattled, and I still get chills thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't acted fast. I'm writing this because I had another nightmare last night, and I don't know what else to do. I know dwelling on it might make things worse, but I can't keep this to myself anymore. My name is Denny Ellen, and I'm 22 years old. I've always been close to my grandparents, kind, gentle, Christian folks. As a kid, I was so attached to them that I'd stay at their house for weeks at a time. Their home hasn't had any deaths, but it's haunted. Seriously haunted. I blame my uncle. He thought it'd be funny to mess with things, call stuff into the house, but it's not a joke. Whatever's there is evil. When I'd sleep on their couch, I'd hear scratching on the armrest right by my head. Sometimes it sounded like people moving around in the kitchen. Doors would open and close on their own. One time, I was in the living room with my uncle watching cartoons and drawing when he said, "Hey, around 10 p.m. last night, all the doorknobs in the house turned at the same time." I didn't want to hear it. It was already 9:50 p.m., so I tried to ignore him. But I swear, as soon as the clock hit 10, every doorknob in the house rattled, like someone grabbed them, twisted, and let go. It was loud, aggressive. I want to believe my uncle was pranking me, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Sometimes I'd sleep in my grandmother's bed. One night, I woke up because I felt my hair sliding across the pillow. I was moving. Something had my ankles and was dragging me toward the closet. I tried to scream for my grandparents, but I was so scared, only whispers came out. I clawed at the sheets, anything to hold on, but there wasn't much to grip. My hand slid across the old glossy with the bed frame, and the floor squeaked as I was pulled. When my knees hit the edge of the bed, it let go. I just lay there, legs dangling off, frozen in shock. You'd think something like that would keep you up all night, but I was so mentally drained, I crawled back up and passed out. A month later, without me saying a word about it, my uncle told me he'd been dragged off his bed too. He was starting to regret whatever he'd done to bring this stuff into the house. It wasn't funny anymore. I started having nightmares every night. Things no 6-year-old should dream about. They often started after waking up in my grandmother's house, but they didn't feel like regular dreams, not even like sleep paralysis. They felt real. I dreamt of my grandparents being torn apart, their bodies shredded into bloody chunks across the bed. In another dream, I woke up on the couch where I'd fallen asleep, and a woman in Victorian clothes sat next to me. She looked like a rotting corpse, and I can still hear the way she laughed at me. I had a recurring dream about a man in military clothes. I knew his name in the dream, but if I said it, he'd get furious and violent. His name was Mr. Walker. But as terrifying as those dreams were, nothing compares to the thing that still haunts me. There's something in my grandmother's closet, a dark, formless mass, like a black void. It's the heart of the house's evil. I've had countless nightmares about it. I left my grandmother's house at 15 because I couldn't take it anymore. For a while, the nightmares stopped, but over the years, they've come back, worse than ever. It's always the same. I'm dreaming something nice. Then suddenly I wake up, but I'm not awake. I'm in my grandmother's room, and I know I shouldn't look at the closet, but I always do. A wave of terror and dread hits me. The thing starts whispering, laughing. I try to pray, beg God to make it stop, but nothing works. Over time, I found ways to cope in the dreams. I cover my eyes, sing loudly, and sometimes that'd wake me up. But now it's in my head. I can't block it out. I yell that I'm not scared, demand it leave, but it knows I'm lying. It thinks it's funny. I squeeze my eyes shut, trying to wake up, but I'm trapped until it decides I've had enough. Sometimes it shows me my parents, my grandma, even my dog. Last night, it was my dog. I begged them to wake me up, but they couldn't. I'm stuck in a nightmare until it's done with me. It's wearing me down. I woke up today exhausted, drained, and I've had enough. I'm going back to my grandmother's house to face this thing. Whatever it is, I can't keep running from it. I was 24, a student in a Job Corps program in northern Washington state, when these events happened. I've always been pretty laid back, not easily spooked, and back then, I didn't put much stock in the paranormal. I wasn't a total skeptic, though I kept an open mind. The Job Corps campus was originally a mental hospital, built in 1912. Some buildings were rented out to the program for classrooms and dorms, housing about 300 students. Behind the dorms sat the main hospital, abandoned and barely maintained, locked up due to asbestos and lead paint issues. From day one, we were told to steer clear of those unused buildings, with threats of arrest and expulsion if we didn't. During orientation, the teacher gave us a quick history of the hospital, but then things got weird. She mentioned a ghost investigation team that had checked out the hospital and found nothing, adding, "So don't go looking for anything and you'll be fine." She shut down any further talk about it, which struck me as odd, but I let it go. The campus had 4 dorms. Mine had 2 floors, boys on the first, girls on the second, where I lived. The RA's office was on the first floor. The second floor was shaped like a cross. Center Hall led to an intersection called T Hall, with West Hall branching right, East Hall left, and a lounge at the top. There were 4 exits, 3 locked fire escapes with alarms, and 1 main exit at the end of Center Hall. Early on, I used the West Hall shower room and restroom because they were the biggest, but something about them always fell off. Everyone seemed uneasy there, like you were being watched by something dark that didn't want you around. A few months in, I became a dorm leader, which came with perks like my own room. In exchange, I had to help maintain the dorm and report rule breakers. That's when things started getting strange. It was a holiday, and the dorm was nearly empty. I was in my room, doing laundry and catching up on leadership paperwork. Part of my job was handing out incentive points, kind of like dorm currency. I left my room to distribute them with my last stop in West Hall. As I turned to head back to my room in East Hall, I spotted a girl in T Hall. She had long black hair, wore all black, and I didn't recognize her. I figured she was a visitor, but something felt wrong. As I walked into T Hall, she started heading toward East Hall, the same direction I was going. Passing the lounge, I glanced at its window. It was empty. I looked back to see where she was going, but she was gone. I'd only looked away for a second. Every door in that dorm squeaked loudly when opened, and the keypads clicked when you punched in codes. I would have heard something. Standing in the East Hall doorway, I tried to figure out where she could have gone. There was only one exit, and I was blocking it. Sure, she could have been visiting someone, but no one's allowed in other people's rooms. A major rule. Plus, everyone in East Hall was gone for the holiday. As dorm leader, I had to enforce the rules, so I stood there, listening for any sound. After 15 minutes of nothing, I called the RA Julie, who I was friends with. I asked if she'd checked in any guests. "Nope," she said. "The dorm's dead today." I told her about the strange girl in East Hall and asked her to do a security check. I stayed in the doorway while Julie searched. She checked every room, the showers, the restroom. Nothing. She even checked the fire escape, but it was locked. Alarm set. She got to my room last. Empty. I noticed Julie's face, worried, almost scared. She rechecked every room, top to bottom. We exchanged a what the hell look. How does someone vanish in a dead-end hallway on the second floor? We searched the rest of the floor, with me standing in T Hall where I could see everything. No girl. We shrugged it off, but it stuck with me. A few weeks later, I'd mostly forgotten the incident until weird stuff started happening in the West Hall restroom. That restroom had 4 toilets sharing a large tank, 2 in front, 2 in back. To get to the back stalls, you had to pass the front ones. I always used the last stall, probably because I could see the others and know I was alone. The restroom door squeaked like crazy, so you always knew when someone came in. It was another quiet weekend, and I was in the back stall, taking my time since I was alone. After a minute, I heard a metallic clicking sound. My first thought was, how did someone sneak in here? The clicking went on for about 30 seconds, and I figured someone was messing with me. Is somebody here? I called out. The clicking stopped. I asked again, hey, is anybody in here or what? A loud bang echoed, followed by a scraping sound, like metal on metal. The scraping moved to the stall next to mine. I yelled, "What the hell?" That's when I saw movement to my left. The trash box on the wall was slowly turning upside down, its contents spilling onto the floor. I stared dumbfounded. The box hung there, upside down, for a few seconds before dropping back into place. I bolted out of there, heart racing. I waited an hour before going back to investigate. Every stall's trash box had been emptied onto the floor. I cleaned it up, part of my job, but I figured out the sounds. The clicking was the trash box lids opening and closing. The scraping was the boxes being turned upside down. I reported it to Julie, who was RA again. She gave me that same worried, scared look and said, "I don't know what to tell you." She gave me some incentive points for cleaning up and thanked me. I even told my trade boss about it. He gave me a weird look, mumbled some nonsense about the Earth rotation, and told me not to bring it up again. My third experience happened in that same damn restroom. I didn't want to use it, but I had no choice. Another dead weekend. Same back stall. I'd been in there less than a minute when loud sobbing started coming from the empty stall next to mine. It was definitely a woman, crying like her world was ending. I knew I was alone. I checked the stalls when I came in. I was PMSing hard that day and not in the mood for paranormal crap. I tried to ignore it, but the crying got louder. Finally, I said, "What's the matter?" "Just tell me already." Nothing. The sobbing continued. I asked again, "What's the matter?" "Just tell me." Still nothing. I stood on the toilet seat, checked the other stalls. Empty. My PMS took over and I shouted, "If you're not going to tell me what's wrong, then shut up and leave me alone." Like flipping a switch, the crying stopped. I wasn't scared, just pissed. I searched the bathroom top to bottom. Nothing. I wasn't expecting to find anything. Weird stuff was starting to feel normal. Julie was on the graveyard shift, so I told her about it. She gave me that look again and said, "I don't know what to tell you." Then she asked if I'd seen her doing bed checks at 3 a.m. the night before. I hadn't, but asked why. She stared at her desk, then excused herself for rounds. A couple months later, I graduated and went home for a few weeks. I returned for graduation ceremony. A big deal since only a quarter of students make it through. Most staff attended, including Julie, who wasn't working. After the ceremony, my family left, and I went to my trade workshop to say goodbye to friends and meet the newbies. Julie walked in, waving me over. She was acting odd, kept looking over my shoulder. She pulled me into an empty classroom and sat down. I did too. She looked over my shoulder again, then leaned in and asked if I remembered the paranormal stuff I'd told her about. "Hell, yeah," I said. "Who could forget?" Her eyes locked on mine, and she said I wasn't the first or last to report weird things in the dorm or on campus. She apologized for brushing me off before. She'd been under orders not to talk about it. Staff could lose their jobs for discussing paranormal incidents. She was only telling me now because I wasn't a student anymore. Then she asked if I remember her question about the 3 a.m. bed checks. I nodded. She shook her head and said students had been reporting her standing at the foot of their beds, staring at them around 3 a.m. The problem? Julie's bed checks ended at 2 a.m. She shared more stories from other students, even other dorms. But I'll stop here. I don't want to repeat things I didn't witness. After graduating, I dug into the hospital's history. That ghost investigation? It was the TV show Ghost Hunters. They did find evidence of strange activity. You can watch it on YouTube. Season 3, Episode 13, Northern State Hospital. All I'll say is, I left that school believing in the paranormal a lot more than when I arrived. I'm a 22-year-old guy from the heart of America, a fourth-year electrical engineering student. This story covers events from my third year, around mid-spring 2015 to about 2 months ago, when I wrote this in May 2016. I'm an agnostic, always putting my faith in math and science, But what happened shook my understanding of what's rational and real. I started listening to be Buster's channel at work and thought it'd be a good place to share my story. I'm still not sure if this was all in my head or real, so for the sake of my reputation studies, I'm staying anonymous, calling myself R and changing the names of others involved. I kept a journal through it all, and instead of fearing what I saw, I tried to study it. My findings are shaky at best, but the implications are chilling. If anyone's experienced something paranormal, my story might offer comfort, or maybe more terror than you'd like. It started one night in spring 2015. I was driving home from a tutoring session, feeling good about myself. I'd been tutoring a student in calculus, a tough subject, and after weeks of work, he was finally getting it. One of my professors noticed my knack for the subject and suggested I tutor for extra cash. I was hesitant but grew to love it, even if I ended up teaching more algebra than calculus. Nights like this, where my student made real progress, boosted my ego. As I was patting myself on the back, a loud screech of tires cut through my thoughts, and everything went dark. Next thing I knew, my vision was flooded with giant, colorful spots. They slowly cleared into the silhouette of a woman, yelling at me through my blood-stained but intact car window. Later, I figure out she was saying, "The ambulance is on its way. Hang in there, sir." At the time, I was dazed, my ears ringing, colorful blobs still clouding my sight. Blood ran down my face. I must have hit my head. Acting on instinct, I fumbled with the door, which wouldn't budge. I unbuckled my seatbelt and started kicking it. The woman was probably yelling at me to stop, but I couldn't hear clearly. The door gave way, and I stumbled onto the road just as paramedics pulled up. One jumped out, running toward me, shouting to stop moving in case I had a spinal injury. I stood there, dumbly looking at my car, T-boned by what I assumed was the woman's vehicle. We were at an intersection with stop signs only on our road, notorious for accidents because trees hid the signs. A few onlookers watched from nearby houses and passing cars, but once they saw both drivers were okay, they lost interest. Under the streetlights, the spots in my vision had turned into faint, amorphous blobs. Before I knew it, paramedics had me in a neck brace and on a stretcher, asking questions. "Sir, what's your name?" one asked. "R," I mumbled. He shined a light in my eyes. "Looks like a concussion." They loaded me into the ambulance and whisked me to the hospital. On the way, they kept asking questions. I got annoyed, snapping, like I got T-boned when they asked how I felt. At the hospital, tests and scans showed a broken rib, a few cracked ones, a concussion, 3 stitches on my head, and plenty of bruises. All things considered, I got off lightly. They wanted to keep me overnight, but that turned into a week after finding an abnormality in my MRI. Some part of my brain, I don't recall which, was getting unusual blood flow, and they wanted to ensure it wouldn't cause a hemorrhage. That first night in the hospital, I noticed the blobs of my vision hadn't gone away. They only appeared in dark areas of the room, which is why I didn't notice sooner. I told the nurses, who didn't seem worried. My doctor said it was likely a side effect of the brain activity. The second night, my parents visited and told me the woman who hit me was texting and missed the stop sign. Her insurance would cover most of the damage to my car. After they left, I lay in the dark room, unable to sleep. My roommate, George, an older guy in his late 50s or early 60s, was there for a heart issue and snored like a chainsaw. I stared at the blobs in my vision. The more I focused, the stranger they seemed. They sharpened, taking on a 3D quality like lava lamp contents. They glowed faintly, mostly white or orange, with some yellow, blue, green, red, or purple. Translucent but solid, they moved slowly, deliberately, absorbing and expelling each other as they phased through walls. They ranged from a few centimeters to 2 meters long, with a serene, jellyfish-like beauty. Then one larger blob stopped moving. It pulsed rapidly, darkening until it was blacker than the darkest shadow in the room. It became solid, independent of the others, and slowly morph into the silhouette of a man, one I recognized all too well. Years ago, I dealt with sleep paralysis and the shadowy figures that came with it, often called shadow people. I'd read online stories about them killing people or causing terror, but I thought that was nonsense. To me, they were a chemical imbalance in the brain, nothing supernatural. I used to get sleep paralysis 2 or 3 times a week, and it terrified me as a kid. But after researching, I developed a way to beat it. The paralysis came from too much of a hormone that keeps you still during sleep. When the brain tries to fix this, it releases adrenaline, causing paranoia and hallucinations that take human form. I figured if I could regulate the adrenaline, I'd stop it. So I took up kendo, a Japanese sword fighting style I loved. The exercise worked. Over months, the paralysis faded. During episodes, I'd wake up with dread, seeing a shadow figure at the foot of my bed, creeping closer. My chest would tighten, but eventually, I could move my fingers. I'd wish for a weapon and a shurnai. Kendo practice sword would appear in my hand, but my subconscious knew it wasn't real. The shurnai had no weight, unlike the real ones I trained with. This realization turned the nightmare into a lucid dream, letting me fight the shadow and wake up in my empty room. I saw it as my brain personifying its chemical struggle. By my late teens, the shadow people stopped appearing, only returning under stress, and I dispelled them easily. Until now, that was the closest I'd come to anything supernatural, and I'd beaten it with logic and science. But what stood before me was unmistakably a shadow person. I felt no dread or paralysis. I could move fine. I watched as it crept across the room, not toward me, but toward George. He'd stopped snoring, making weak, choking noises. I got up, grabbed my foredrip for support, and quietly pulled back the curtain dividing our beds. George was staring at the shadow, eyes wide like they'd pop out, mouth gaping as if gasping for air. His heart monitor only beeped slightly faster, which seemed wrong for how he looked, convulsing. I figured this was a vivid dream, maybe from drugs in my 4. I ripped out the foreign sensors, yelling, "Get away, you damn shadow prick." The shadow paused, startled, then turned its faceless gaze on me. That familiar sleep paralysis terror hit, but I stood my ground, taking a shaky fighting stance. It advanced, its limbs lengthening unnaturally. I swung a punch, expecting to wake up, but my fist hit something solid. It had mass. Time froze as I stood there, stunned, the shadow glaring with faceless hatred. The door flew open, light flooding in. The shadow darted into the darker corners with impossible speed. 2 nurses rushed in, scolding me for getting up and removing my 4. I was speechless. Was I hallucinating? How could I feel it? Was my brain injury making me see things? George, in a trembling voice, asked the nurses to turn on the lights. As they did, I saw the shadow in the corner for a split second before it vanished. The nurses started to leave, but George insisted they keep the lights on. I backed him up, too shaken to argue. Then George said something that shattered everything I believed about the world. I saw it too. My mind spiraled. Was it a dream? A hallucination? How did George see it? Were those blobs connected to shadow? Was I losing it? After half an hour, I demanded George tell me what he saw, hoping it'd help me make sense of it. It didn't. He described everything exactly as I remembered. That night, before I somehow fell asleep, I decided one thing. I needed answers, no matter what it took. Little did I know, I was about to open a Pandora's box I wasn't ready for. It was 3 a.m. when we pulled into a rundown gas station in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. And I mean nowhere. This place was the only building for miles, surrounded by nothing but empty fields stretching into the darkness. We were about 2 miles off the interstate, and at that hour, it was pitch black outside. The flickering lights of the gas station were the only thing cutting through the void. The place was closed, so it was just us, me and my husband, alone in the eerie quiet. My husband started filling up the Jeep while I rummaged through our bags in a mild panic. I couldn't find my purse. After tearing through everything, I realized I'd left it in a relative's car back in Chicago. Great. Just what I needed at 3 a.m. in the middle of nowhere. We were still sorting through our stuff when an SUV pulled up right next to us, way closer than necessary. The driver was a white guy, probably in his late 20s or early 30s. I was sitting in the passenger seat, and my husband was just about to get back into the driver's side when the guy walked over. "Hey, I lost my phone here." "Have you seen it?" he said, his voice casual but oddly off. A cold knot of dread twisted in my stomach. I glanced at his waist and saw a flip phone clipped to his belt. Why was he asking about a lost phone when he clearly had one? I studied his face. He looked normal enough, plain, even, but there was something wrong, something sinister in the way his eyes didn't quite match his easygoing tone. "I must have left it in the field over there," he said, gesturing toward the pitch-black expanse beyond the gas station's lights. "Can you help me look for it?" My husband, ever the good Samaritan, already had his iPhone out, flashlight on, ready to help. He started to follow the guy, and I swear my heart stopped. I grabbed my phone and fired off a text to him, *leave. Now, *. He saw it immediately, glanced at me through the window, and must have caught the terror on my face because he bolted back to the Jeep, jumped in, and we peeled out of there like our lives depended on it. As we sped away, I looked back and saw the guy climbing into his SUV. My stomach churned. Something about that moment felt wrong, like we had just escaped something awful. We drove for about 20 miles on the interstate, hearts still racing, until we reached a rest stop. Exhausted, we parked at the very end of the lot, figuring we'd catch a few hours of sleep. We reclined our seats and tried to calm down. But not long after, my husband shook me awake, his voice low and urgent. "Look out your window." I turned and my blood ran cold. That same SUV was parked right next to us. There were plenty of empty spots at the rest stop. Hell, the spot he'd taken wasn't even a real parking space. We were at the far end of the lot, tucked away, and yet he'd chosen to park right there, with our seats reclined. He probably didn't realize we were in the Jeep, but the coincidence was too much. It wasn't a coincidence. He'd followed us. We held our breath, watching as he got out of his SUV, walked around our Jeep, and peered at it like he was looking for something or someone. Then he headed toward the rest stop building, probably searching for us. The second he disappeared inside, we snapped our seats up, my husband floored it, and we tore out of there. My hands were shaking as I kept checking the rear view mirror, half expecting to see his headlights behind us. We drove another 50 miles, veering 6 miles north of the interstate until we found a small hotel. We checked in, locked the door, and collapsed, too rattled to sleep much. Thankfully, we never saw that guy again. But to this day, I can't shake the feeling that we narrowly escaped something truly dangerous that night. Who was he? What did he want? And why the hell did he follow us? I grew up in a small town in southern Ontario, Canada, where winter meant feet upon feet of icy, sparkling snow that shimmered like diamonds in the sun. Snowmobiles were a huge part of my childhood. I'd been riding them for as long as I could remember. My dad and I were obsessed. Every weekend, as long as the ground was white, we'd take the sled out, chasing the thrill of speeding down vast, sometimes blinding trails. My dad had poured time and money into customizing his snowmobile, a Firecat. I don't know much about the specs. I was just a kid, but I do remember overheating it once because I drove it too slow. That thing was a beast, built for speed, and we'd often take it off jumps and bluffs on the wilder trails. By this point, I was too big to sit between my dad's arms, steering like I used to, so I rolled behind him, clinging to his waist to keep from flying off. It was St. Patrick's Day, and a freak snowstorm had dumped fresh powder the night before. Snow this late in the year was rare. So, being the fanatics we were, Dad took the day off work, let me skip school, and we decided to take the Firecat out for what we figured would be its last ride of the season. We hit the trails early, the sun still low, determined to make the most of the day. At first, we stuck to our usual routes, savoring the warm air and sunlight filtering through our snowsuits. But then Dad spotted a trail he hadn't noticed before, half hidden by small birch saplings, winding through a thickening forest. We loved trails that immersed us in nature's beauty, so without much thought, he turned onto it. The sun was high, in a clear blue sky by then. We'd already stopped twice for gas, grabbing coffee and donuts along the way. The snow was starting to melt, turning the trail into a boggy mess of brown slush. Other snowmobilers were out, clearly thinking the same as us. Get one last ride in before the season was truly over. As we pressed deeper into the new trail, the sled started slogging through muddy patches. Pools of dark, icy water appeared, and we kept going, stubborn and curious, even as the puddles grew larger. At one point, water splashed over the side of the Firecat, soaking my boots. The trees around us got denser, their shadows swallowing the path until we could barely see beyond their branches. After about half an hour of navigating this muddy maze, we came across a group of 4 snowmobilers, covered head to toe in mud, idling at the edge of what looked like a lake. This wasn't a puddle. It stretched across the entire trail for at least 200 yards. Dad pulled up, and we exchanged small talk with the group, chatting about the snow and the weird weather. Dad asked the guy in a green suit, "Is it safe to cross?" The man paused, his helmet still on, then cracked his visor just enough to show his chin and a sliver of a smile. "Oh, yeah, man, you've got a Firecat. You'll make it no problem." Dad laughed, nodded, and edged the sled toward the water. Normally, for shallow puddles, we'd creep through to avoid splashing slush onto ourselves or anyone behind us. But as we inched into this water, it kept rising, higher and higher. Before Dad realized what was happening, the Firecat started to sink. He gunned the throttle, but it was no use. The back end, where I was sitting, went under first. I was a tiny kid, looked more like a 6-year-old than an 8 or 9-year-old, wearing a bright pink puffy snowsuit and a yellow helmet. There's no way those guys didn't see a child on the back of the sled. Dad stayed calm, standing up and carefully lifted me onto the seat so I wouldn't get wet. He turned back to the 4 men and threw his arms up like, "What the hell do we do now?" But instead of helping, the guy in the green suit laughed, his shoulders shaking with it, then signaled his group to turn around and leave. They sped off, leaving us stranded. Dad's hands dropped to his sides. We stood there in silence as the Firecat kept sinking. This wasn't a puddle. It was a flooded trail, practically a pond. The back end was fully submerged, and the deep glugging of the underwater exhaust filled the air. The sled's lights flickered, and then the front end started going under too. Panic set in. Dad had a cell phone in his snowsuit, but out here, he doubted it'd get a signal. The snow might have been melting, but it was still only 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, and chunks of ice were tugging at the sled, dragging it deeper. My snowsuit wasn't going to protect me from hypothermia. Dad scooped me off the sinking Firecat and tried to balance me on a bent sapling above the water. But as he moved, he slipped, and we both plunged into the freezing water. I managed to grab the sapling and pull myself up, so only my legs got wet. Dad fell backward, nearly submerging himself, and grabbed the sled for support, but it was useless. He tore off his helmet, chucked it into the water, and ripped open his jacket to check his phone, sopping wet. When he looked at me, I saw fear in his eyes for the first time. "We have to walk, kiddo," he said quietly. "We're closer to the end than the start. We got to move through the water. Quick as you can, okay?" Tears stung my cheeks, freezing almost instantly. My helmet didn't have a visor, so my face was exposed except for a damp cloth mask. I nodded, took his hand, and we started wading. Dad bent saplings along the way for me to walk on, keeping me above the water as much as he could. The pond stretched endlessly around us. After a few yards, the water got shallower but turned into thick, sticky mud. Dad hoisted me onto his shoulders and kept going, but he kept tripping, his feet sinking into the muck. At one point, his foot caught on a hidden tree branch underwater. He fell forward, accidentally throwing me off like a football. I hit the water butt first and scrambled to my feet. Behind me, I heard him struggling, splashing, calling out, "Keep going, kiddo. You're almost there. I'm right behind you." I didn't hesitate. I waded through the waist-deep water toward the shore, just feet away now. The mud tried to steal my boots with every step. Then I felt Dad's hand on my shoulder, urging me to move faster. He was half dragging me when disaster struck. I lost my left boot, sock and all, to the mud. I screamed, but Dad knew he couldn't go back. His grip on my wrist was weakening, and I was exhausted. Finally, he pulled me onto shore, and I sobbed as my bare foot hit the muddy snow. He took off his wet glove, wrung it out, and shoved it onto my foot, tried to spread my toes to the fingers to make it fit. But my toes were curled up, frozen stiff. The air grew colder as we trudged through the unfamiliar forest. Ice crystals clung to Dad's snowsuit, and probably mine too. He carried me for a while, but his body was shaking. He could barely hold himself up, let alone me. So I leaned on his arm, half dragged along for what felt like hours. I couldn't feel my foot anymore, and my eyes kept drooping. Suddenly, Dad yanked me forward and started sprinting. I could barely keep up, crying for him to slow down, but he didn't. He'd found new strength, scooping me up and throwing me over his shoulder like a sack. I was confused until I saw it. A clearing, a road, a house. The house looked abandoned, an old farmhouse, but Dad marched up to the door and pounded on it. An elderly woman answered and, without a word, ushered us inside. She sat us in front of a roaring fireplace and draped thick, scratchy wool blankets over us. We didn't complain. Dad started explaining what happened while my body stung like it was on fire, every inch of exposed skin screaming as it warmed. The woman's husband came home with their only car and drove us straight to the hospital. I had severe pneumonia and early-stage hypothermia. My foot recovered, but I had to stay in the hospital for a few days. Dad was released after a couple of hours and went home to tell the family, bringing me some of my things. He put an article in the local paper detailing exactly what happened and describing the 4 snowmobilers who'd left us to sink. He hoped someone would come forward with information, but no one ever did. The next day, while Mom visited me in the hospital, Dad and some friends took ATVs back to the trail to retrieve the Firecat. After an entire afternoon, they freed it from the icy water. Dad towed it home, and it sat in the garage for 2 weeks. He estimated we'd walked at least 20 minutes after the sled sank before finding the couple who saved us. I was released from the hospital a few days later, feeling better but nervous about snowmobiling again. When Mom dropped me off at Dad's, I found him in the garage, tinkering with the Firecat. He eventually got it running almost perfectly. We used it for 3 more seasons before selling it one summer. This didn't happen to me directly, but I witnessed it, and it still gives me chills to this day. Back in junior high, there was this kid named Ryan who was a stereotypical popular jerk. You know the type. Captained the football team, thought he was God's gift to the world, bullied nerds like me, cheated on his girlfriends, the whole deal. His dad owned an auto parts store, specializing in paint jobs and window tinting. The guy had a bunch of vehicles, but his pride and joy was a dark blue truck with orange and yellow flames on the hood, tinted windows, and those flashy spinning hubcaps. Ryan's dad was always at school pickups, wearing the same red and white team jersey as Ryan, a matching cap, and blue jeans. Those details about the truck and his dad's look are important, and you'll see why. One day, I was hobbling to the nurse's office after falling down the stairs and spraining my ankle. I called my dad to pick me up and sat in the waiting area, keeping an eye out for his car. About 5 minutes later, Ryan strolled in, looking bored out of his mind. For whatever reason, maybe because his cool friends weren't around, he decided to chat with me. I wasn't thrilled, but I played along, keeping things polite with small talk about nothing important. After a bit, Ryan glanced out the glass doors and spotted his dad's truck pulling into the school entrance. "See you later, man," he said, grabbing his backpack and heading for the door. But then he stopped dead, his hand on the glass, and just stood there. "What's wrong?" I asked. He turned to me, his face uneasy. "My dad's never this early. He usually picks me up later, and he always parks right by the doors." I leaned forward to look. The truck was parked way out by the flagpoles, not close like usual. And something else was off. The hubcaps weren't spinning. They looked different, like they weren't even the same ones. Ryan's phone buzzed, and he ignored it, assuming it was his dad. After a minute of hesitation, he shrugged it off and walked out toward the truck. I was tired and in pain, so I closed my eyes to rest while waiting for my dad. Suddenly, I heard shouting, an older man's voice mixed with Ryan screaming. I snapped my head toward the window and saw Ryan flailing his arms, trying to pull away from some guy who was yanking him toward the truck. My ankle was killing me, so I couldn't run to help. Instead, I yelled for the nurse and any staff nearby. "Someone's trying to grab Ryan." The nurse bolted to the phone to call the police, and a couple of secretaries sprinted outside toward the truck. The second the guy saw them coming, he shoved Ryan hard, jumped into the truck, and sped off, disappearing into the intersection near the highway. Ryan was a mess, crying and clutching his face. The guy had pepper sprayed him. The secretaries helped him back to the nurse's office, where he sat, shaking, while they cleaned him up. A few minutes later, the police showed up along with Ryan's real dad. An ambulance treated Ryan's eyes, and the cops started asking questions. Since I was the only student who saw the whole thing, they interviewed me, along with the staff who'd run out. Ryan's dad, still in his usual jersey and cap, looked shaken but grateful. He and the police asked me to stay in touch with Ryan, maybe hang out to help him cope. I wasn't exactly thrilled. Ryan had slammed me into lockers more times than I could count, but I swallowed my pride and gave him my number. From that day on, Ryan was a different person. The cocky bully who used to torment me was gone, replaced by someone paranoid and clingy. He stuck to me like glue at school, especially when it was time for his dad to pick him up. I'd have to stand with him, sometimes holding his damn hand, until his dad's truck pulled up. He even started calling me every night, venting about his fears and updating me on what the police were finding. The details were creepy as hell. The guy who tried to grab him didn't just know where Ryan went to school or where his dad parked. He knew everything. He'd painted his truck to match Ryan's dad's exactly, flames and all. He even dressed like Ryan's dad, down to the jersey and cap. Ryan said the disguise was so convincing that he didn't realize it wasn't his dad until he looked the guy in the eyes. It gets worse. The police figured out the call Ryan ignored came from a payphone at a nearby gas station, not the guy in the truck. That meant there were likely two people involved, one driving, one calling. Despite having surveillance footage, a license plate, and a description of the driver, the police never caught the guy or his gas station accomplice. But the terror didn't stop there. About 3 months after the truck incident, Ryan called me in the middle of the night, hysterical. Someone had thrown Molotov cocktails at his house. A couple hit a window, shattering it and setting part of the place on fire. A month later, someone, probably the same creep, torched his dad's auto shop. Ryan and his dad packed up and moved out of town not long after. The creep vanished too, leaving everyone wondering who the hell he was. Was he a pissed-off parent or relative of someone Ryan bullied? Maybe the dad or brother of one of Ryan's ex-girlfriends? A disgruntled customer from his dad's shop? Or just some random psycho who got off on terrorizing teenage boys? The possibilities were endless, and none of them made it any less unsettling. After Ryan left, I got paranoid myself, terrified the creep might come after me for witnessing it all. For a long time, I refused to let my parents pick me up from school, no matter how sick or hurt I was. I couldn't shake the fear that some stranger would pull up in a truck that looked just like my dad's and try to drag me away. Even now, thinking about it sends shivers down my spine. I've been working at a big-name retail chain in the U.S. for nearly 9 years now, so I made plenty of friends in the store over time. This story happened about 3 years ago, when I was still a regular employee, not yet a manager, but pretty seasoned in the job. During the holiday rush, we hire a ton of seasonal workers. Some stick around, some don't. Among the new faces was a young guy named Matt. For his age, Matt had an insane work ethic. The kid once skied to work during a brutal snowstorm rather than call out. I heard he was an Eagle Scout, an honor society member all through school, a real overachiever. But he was also kind of loner, a bit weird, though he warmed up to me pretty fast. I worked in a department near the back of the store, and he was on the backroom team. So we crossed paths a lot. We chat about stuff like video games and comics. Nothing deep, just passing small talk. You played that new game yet? It's awesome, that kind of thing. Before long, he started syncing his breaks with mine, mostly to bum cigarettes. Matt ended up staying on after the holiday season. So I had a regular smoke buddy. One morning in January, out of nowhere, he asked if I knew someone named Jack, a kid who went to the high school I graduated from. Both Matt and Jack were a lot younger than me. So I told him I didn't know the guy. "Oh, okay," he said, casual as anything. "I was just asking, because a friend asked me to deal with him. I'm kind of protector in my circle, and he's been messing with her." I brushed it off, mostly surprised Matt even had friends outside work. Didn't think much of it. The next day, he brought up Jack again during a break. I figured out where he lives, but there were so many cars in his driveway, I'm not sure which one's his. I need to know he's home, or if I do something, it's gotta be to his car. That raised a red flag. It sounded shady, but I figured he was just planning some dumb prank. Kids do stupid stuff, right? Still, I warned him, be careful in that area. My dad lives around there, and there's a lot of vandalism. Most houses have security cameras out front. He didn't blink, just switched the topic to the new Zelda game. I let it go. A month or so passed without any more talk about Jack or his mission, and I was relieved. I showed up to work one morning, took my usual 9:45 smoke break. Matt typically worked later, so I was alone. But that day, he'd picked up an early shift and followed me out, asking for a cigarette. I handed him one and sat down, ready to relax. Then he said, all calm and matter of fact, "So, I finally got that kid." The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I tried to pivot. "Oh, cool. Hey, I beat Zelda last night. Awesome game. You should try it." But he wasn't biting. He kept going. "You know what ricin is?" I admitted I didn't. I wish I still didn't. Ricin, he explained, is a deadly poison. Odorless, tasteless, no antidote. Can kill you in 3 days if you ingest it. He started rattling off how to make it, what it does, like he was talking about a recipe for brownies. I put it on a scratch and sniff card and walked it to his house last night. His birthday was recently, so he won't think twice about it, right? My mind was racing. I come from a big, nosy family. If a hand-addressed card with no return address showed up in our mailbox, one of my siblings or parents would have opened it without hesitation. As much as I wanted to believe Matt was just trying to sound tough, I couldn't risk it. I played it cool, kept talking about Zelda, and headed back inside. The second I was alone, I told my supervisor everything and sat in an office to call the police. 2 plainclothes detectives showed up soon after and grilled me for details. They said it was probably just talk, but were glad I reported it. They left, and Matt finished his shift, leaving with another backroom coworker. Not long after, the detectives came back. They'd found a card in Jack's mailbox with something in it. Couldn't tell what yet, had to send it to a lab. They went to Matt's house and talked to him. He claimed he'd only put powder in the card to scare Jack, nothing more. The next week was chaos. Lab results came back. The card tested positive for a particularly potent batch of ricin. Matt tried a bolt when a hazmat team showed up at his house. They found the rest of the poison he dumped in a nearby storm drain. He was arrested, and I thought that'd be the end of it. Nope. Reporters and journalists swarmed my workplace, my house, even my parent houses. I had to wear someone else's name tag at work, so they wouldn't know it was me. They'd linger in my department, talking about me in the third person, trying to butter me up for a quote. I wasn't having it. My boss told me to keep quiet, and honestly, I just wanted the whole thing to go away. My ex-boyfriend even kicked me out because of the media circus and police visits. All I wanted was my normal life back. I met with Jack's family, the would-be victim. His parents were incredibly kind, thanking me through tears. The mom painted me an angel as a thank you gift, and though I'm not religious, I've kept it. Jack's brother was a paraplegic with a seizure disorder, completely dependent on care. His sister, who was about to open the mailbox when the police called, was a 2-time cancer survivor. Jack, the oldest, was there with his girlfriend. Turns out, Matt's motive was pathetically petty. Jack was dating Matt's ex. That's it. The kid tried to kill someone over a breakup. I met with the family a few times for trial prep, mostly routine stuff, until one day I got a late-night call from a woman I didn't know. She was with a victims protection agency and said I needed to be at the courthouse the next morning. In the meeting were me, Jack's family, the original DA and detectives, plus a new DA and new detectives. They'd pass around a photocopy of a handwritten letter from Matt to another inmate who was about to be released. I don't remember every word, but it was graphic and horrifying. Detailed plans to target each of us. He offered a trust fund, which probably didn't exist, giving it a public defender, to this inmate to do things like kidnap our families, burn them on our lawns while we watched, cut out our tongues and eyelids, force us to drink blood. Each of us had a specific, twisted plan laid out. It was the kind of thing that sticks with you, even if you try to forget. Matt's been sentenced and sent upstate. His trial dragged on forever, finally wrapping up a few months ago. I don't think he's been charged with a letter yet. At least, I haven't heard, and I'm not supposed to go to those hearings, so I may never know. The whole ordeal left me shaken. I just wanted to do the right thing, but it turned my life upside down. Even now, I can't believe someone I shared cigarettes with, someone I talked games with, was capable of something so dark.